In this video, I'm going to take a look at building a brand, how to build a brand, how to build your brand. This obviously is going to be of interest to you if you are a small business owner, or if you perhaps intend starting a business one day. But the bottom line is, if you're a business owner, or if you want to develop a business, you are going to need to develop and build a brand. Now, it may have crossed your mind, or may not have crossed your mind, that certain brands appear to attract absolute fanatical followers. For example, Apple, for example, Starbucks, for example, Nike. All of these brands attract people in a way that exceeds the norm of behavior or attraction that you might expect from a consumer. And in this video, I'm going to look at 7 things that particular brands have. They are brands which have a certain intangible and appear to have a success way beyond what you might imagine or what you'd expect. If I ask you one simple question, or 2 questions: 1, when did you last see an ad for Starbucks? 2, when did you last see an ad for Google? You've probably never seen an ad for Starbucks, you've probably never seen an ad for Google, and yet these brands are so attractive to people. They generate such loathing and such attraction and such passion from people, but clearly they have something going on in their branding and in the way that they've developed or built their brand that is over and above the norm, over and above the customary spending money on advertising. You never saw an ad for Google, you never saw an ad for Starbucks. And in relation to Google, the ironic thing is that Google actually makes a fortune out of selling advertising to other people, to small business owners, to big business owners, to whoever. In this video, I'm going to look at 7 things that you should consider if you want to build your brand. And you should want to build your brand if you are trying to build a business, because you're going to need to persuade people or convince people as to why they should buy from you rather than somebody else. In other words, if I'm a solicitor, for example, and I'm providing a service, for example, a conveyancing service, then why would somebody buy from me as opposed to somebody else? One thing that will separate me from others, and the same will obviously apply to an accountant or anybody else, one thing that will separate is the question of brand. And as I say, there's a certain amount of intangible characteristics about that, but the bottom line is close study of brands like Starbucks, like Nike, like Apple, like Google, who have generated fanatical followers, will identify 7 characteristics of brand. And that's what I'm going to look at in this video. I think you'll find it useful. First thing is, first characteristic or first asset that a really successful brand has is a creation story. And this creation story or origin story essentially looks at where you're from, who are you. So everybody has a story, everybody has a background story, everybody has a creation story. But that creation story can be of huge benefit in building a brand, because people like stories, people relate to stories, people like to know where you're from. And a lot of conversations in Ireland in particular will always focus or start around the question of what part of the country you're from, do you know such and such, and so on and so forth. The whole question then of where you're from obviously feeds into sport, into clubs, into GA teams, rugby teams, soccer teams, and so on. But the creation story is the first thing you should consider very, very strongly, using your creation story if it's of any benefit whatsoever in building your brand, because it will separate you from your competitors, be they physiotherapists, be they accountants, be they solicitors, whatever. Second thing that every brand has, a successful brand like Google, like Starbucks, like Apple, like Nike, is a creed, a belief system. So what do you believe in, and what do you want people to believe? Now, if you consider Apple had a campaign called Think Different. In other words, that was their belief system. And people who wanted to think differently were invited to love Apple, and clearly Apple have attracted a massive number of very, very devoted, very enthusiastic devotees. Just do it, obviously, is a Nike phrase. Again, that's the belief system that Nike used in their particular branding, in their advertising. The third thing that every successful brand, every really successful brand has is some icons. Now, an icon can target any of the five senses, but an icon would include, for example, the Nike swoosh on the Nike footwear. It would include the likes of the Apple logo and the Apple sound when you start up an Apple computer or a MacBook. An icon could also be something like the Coke bottle, in the shape of a Coke bottle. The fourth feature, or the fourth asset that a primal brand has, is rituals. Rituals are the repeated interactions that you have with your customers or with your clients. So that could be doctor and dentist appointments. It could be going to Starbucks regularly. It could be using Google regularly. It could be using Google for research. It could be Googling for anything. The bottom line is the rituals, the repeated interactions that your client or your customer has with you is a massive part of building a brand that goes way beyond anything that advertising or conventional and traditional brand building will do. The fifth aspect or fifth asset that a really strong brand has is non-believers, pagans. In other words, not just people who believe in you and believe in your business and believe in what you're doing, but non-believers. Because if you think about it, you as a business owner cannot serve everybody. If you try to serve everybody, you're likely to serve nobody. So there is going to be a group of people to whom you're going to service, provide your business services and goods or whatever. But you need to be very, very intentional and very, very focused about who you serve, because believe you me, you don't serve everybody. Me, as a solicitor, I serve many, many people, but I'm not for everybody. And there's particular people, particular organizations, particular pieces of work that I simply won't touch with a barge pole. And I simply say that to the person at the outset. I say, look, I'm sorry, but I can't help you. So you need non-believers, you need pagans as well as believers. That is number 5. Number 6 is the sacred words. In other words, there's going to be jargon, there's going to be professional jargon that is expected. It'll define who belongs and who doesn't. So if you think about, for example, ordering a coffee and you're talking about a tall or a grande, that's obviously coffee speak from the likes of Starbucks or Costa or whatever. Again, the believers, the true fans, they know, they understand what these words mean. Likewise, in relation to social media or anything else, people talk about Insta, people talk about bling, people talking about logging on to your computer. And clearly a solicitor is going to have certain jargon, certain words, certain professional jargon in the interaction between him or her and his client. These are all the sacred words, as it were, which should be present in the building of a brand that goes over and above the conventional. The seventh and final thing is that every belief system, every brand, seriously successful brand, has a leader. So all belief systems have leaders, whether it's Richard Branson or Steve Jobs, or whether it's Gandhi, or whether it's Oprah, or whether it's Bill Gates, or whether it's the founders of Google. They all have leaders. I hope you find this video useful. As I say, when did you last see an ad for Starbucks? You never saw one. When did you last see an ad for Google? You never saw one. There are certain brands that go way above, punch way above their weight, because of certain factors, certain assets, certain characteristics. And those characteristics, I've set out 7 of them. Now, you don't have to have all 7, but if you do, it's a good idea and you're onto a good thing. But you certainly should start with, for example, your creation story. If you're an accountant, if you're a physiotherapist, if you're a doctor, if you're a dentist, if you're a solicitor, whatever, you came from someplace. And your story can actually allow you to connect in a way with believers, with fans who ultimately may well follow you in the same way, in a smaller way, but in a similar fashion to the way that Apple, Starbucks and Google attract absolutely rabid followers. Hope you find this video useful. If you do, give it a thumbs up down below, and you may be interested in subscribing to my YouTube channel.